You're with Julian on the Brand Note. Just a quick comment on Scott Morrison's tax cuts, which are going through. I had a big go at the liberal economy last week on the show about how for 6 years it's been declining by every metric. And in a wider sense, the way that the whole neoliberal sham economy that's lasted for 40 years and has destroyed our way of life in this country and in the UK and in America has been hastened to its death, hopefully, by coronavirus. We've been bleeding to death for ages. Obviously, the economy doesn't work. If you look back at the advent of neoliberalism and the fact that a working class person could buy a 3-bedroom home as their birthright, and you wind forward 30 years and you look at the fact that 2 middle class people in Sydney might one day be able to buy a 2-bedroom flat, and the working class person will never own a home. This is really the first time in world history that we've got people that will never own a home despite working full-time their whole lives. That's an economy that hasn't worked. And I said that Scott Morrison will keep pushing in the same way 6 months ago on this show. And he is. We're about to see a real-world version of neoliberalism happen. So JobSeeker ends now. The rise in job seeker payments to make unemployment benefit actually livable, which it's changed a lot of people's lives in this country from being completely unrealistically unlivable, where you're getting $350 a week from unemployment benefit if you've got rental assistance as well, and that you're supposed to live in a city where a 1-bedroom flat can cost $500 a week on that. And they raised it to a capacity that actually made life affordable. They're now cutting it back. At the same time, they're pushing through tax cuts for people higher up the ladder that will benefit disproportionately people on higher incomes. And that is almost like this perfect real-world version of neoliberalism's failures, because we're going to see all the people at the bottom of the economy who are spending 100% of their money in the economy, in shops, on rent, on clothes, on bills, on coffee. Every single thing, every cent they've got is going into the economy. That is going to be directly lifted out of the economy, and they're going to give it to people as tax cuts, who are then going to save that money and not put it in the economy and bolster their savings or their property portfolios, or make up some of the losses. None of that money will have a positive impact on the economy at all, and it's been proven over and over. They've had a progressive think tank called the Australia Institute, and they've released an advert decrying these tax cuts, which I thought was really good, endorsed by former Reserve Bank Governor Bernie Fraser, former Liberal leader John Hewson, Nobel laureate Peter Doherty, and Chief Executive of the Australian Council of Social Service, Cassandra Goldie. In a statement endorsing the campaign, Fraser said, "The unfolding COVID pandemic is a stark reminder to all policymakers of two fundamental truths: that while many of us work and spend in the economies, we all live and die in communities. And secondly, the most vulnerable groups in these communities are always hit hardest in major cases like the pandemic." He said the government naively hope tax cuts are good politics, but they won't, as they increase inequality and fail to ensure job security, and increasing wages with our economy still struggling to exit recession. They are trying to push through tax cuts that won't benefit the economy whilst taking out this job seeker payment. By reducing it, all of that money will come straight out of the economy, and we're going to see the economy decline again. And we've got neoliberal ideologues like Scott Morrison in charge and Josh Frydenberg. And these people are ideologues that will always push for lower working wages and conditions and higher tax breaks. And this is a neoliberal lie, the trickle-down economics, that if we give these people higher up the ladder more money, it's going to trickle down to reach us. And that has been proven to be wrong over and over. And the one reason that our economy hasn't done even worse than it's going to is the job seeker payment. And they're cutting that to give tax cuts to wealthier people. Now, this is going to have a dramatically bad effect. But with our media landscape in this country, we're reliant on people actually making their own TV adverts, because they're not getting held accountable for the coming storm at all. And like I said last week, they're going to try and blame the whole thing on coronavirus and the whole thing on the Labour Party in Victoria and Queensland for shutting down their states and their economies. And it isn't true. if we had a better economy, we would weather this storm better. If we had better unemployment benefit going into it, we would weather this storm better. But now we're trapped in this dual world of these neoliberal economic goons actually doing what the Labour Party would have done if they'd have been allowed to, which is raising unemployment benefit to a level that means people actually have some semblance of disposable income instead of spending their entire lives going backwards and never having anything to spend. And then they're going to take some of that away and they're going to give it back to the same broken model which gave people more money to speculate on property, which increased our living expenditure dramatically to the point where no one can afford anything anymore. And they're still doing it. And they're going to use coronavirus to increase the attacks on wages and conditions by saying that the companies need this, which they've always promoted, but they need it now, even though they needed it the last time they tried to push it all through. And tax cuts are needed to stimulate the economy, even though it's never, in any other time that they've done this, been proven to stimulate the economy. So this is like a beautiful litmus test of neoliberal economics, which unfortunately we're going to live through. How much time have I